Alright, so we're going to take a look at the DPS for that run. See, we ended up with 103.67. Take a look at the spike, pretty nice spike, just under about 150. Then we dropped down and kind of pulled it back up around the 60-second mark and just steadily went back up to end up at 103, which is not bad. We'll take a look at the breakdown. Deteriorating secondary deflector, 20k, which isn't bad. That's probably about average. I've seen 25, almost up to 30. Pets we'll see at almost 15k. We'll take a look at that after. Gravimetric Rift, 12k, which is the gravimetric torpedo right now. When you have a lot of EPG, which obviously this being an exotic Sci build, the gravimetric torpedo right now is really good with it because of the Rift. Our theta radiation, which is from our other torpedo, a little bit lower than what we usually see, but that's usually when we're just running one. We were running both, but still the theta radiation giving us almost 7, and the Rift giving us 12, and those are just the secondary effects of those two torpedoes. Both scale and work really nicely with exotic builds, which is why they're on there. Our gravity well, 10k, subspace vortex 3, about 6.5. Gravimetric spread 3, 3.3, chemocyte 2.7, chronometric polaron array 2, and then you see just going down, just all the different. I mean, with a build like this, instead of only having like 5 or 6, things that are giving you damage, we have a lot of different things cracking off to add up to what we're getting. So nice solid build. Exotic Sci has definitely been doing close to what it was before. Some people are getting exactly, guys like Ernest and his build are still up doing the 130, 140, 150. Same thing with Protius, still getting really good numbers out of this. I think my average is close to around the same, maybe 5, 10k lower. I used to be able to get up to like 120, 130. This 103 I think is actually close to my record. Maybe it's 105 with this build so far. I haven't flown it a lot, and I haven't made many changes to it if I do need to at all. But pure exotic based science builds still working well, still doing their job. Alright, so here we are, just going to go over the build. We're using the Sphere Builder Edoulg Sci Vessel. For me, this is the best Sci build, Sci ship in the game. I think it's up there with the Eternal, but I think it has a little bit of a leg up. I do like the hangar pets that come with this ship. The seating is quite nice. You have your temporal abilities. You have intel if you're running a beam mix hybrid. So, gives us a good opportunity. It has the Lieutenant Commander tactical instead of just a Lieutenant. So there's definitely some nice things about this ship. It's definitely my go-to right now for exotic builds. As you can see up front, pretty much kind of basic if you've seen any of my kind of exotic stuff in the past. We're running the gravimetric torpedo. As you can see in the parse, the rifts are really good, especially with the EPG. The particle emission torp, again, the theta radiation in the clouds, when you use both these torps with spread, I find it to be the best. Then we have the chronometric polaron beam array, which we are using for the 4-piece set, as we'll take a look. The 3-piece set is the chronometric energy converter, and the 4-piece just increases that to 30 seconds instead of 15, which is giving us plus exotic and plus energy weapon damage. Then we have the Terran, kind of just using it for its hits, but mostly our torps are the only weapon really we're using, essentially for DPS. The rest are just for procs and set bonuses. Deflector wise, still running the Solanae secondary, deteriorating, still doing some really great numbers. For Impulse and Warp Core, we're going Temporal. We're doing this for the 2-piece, plus 25% all damage. For Dot and Hazard effects, which is really nice for this kind of build. Shield wise, I'm using the adapted Mako because this used to be my Sci Torp character. And it was literally the gold shield I had. The shield heal, I don't think is a big deal on a ship like this. You could go for, I think it's the Delta shield that has drain if it's a drain EPG kind of thing, or you could just go with the Iconian shield. Definitely, it's not like I would suggest using adapted Mako. It's just what I had on this character that was nice. In the back, we're using the Krenum Chronoton Torpedo and the Chronometric Polaron Omni. This again is for the set. The fourth piece being this, the tactile chronometric capacitor. All of these are from the mission reward, except for the Krenum Chronoton Torpedo, which comes off the Krenum Science Vessel. In devices, 2 of them are done because I ran out of them through that run, but here we'd be using the particle flood batteries that give a bonus to exotic damage. I don't have any at the moment. And then over here, I use the hull patch batteries because I just haven't got the armor catalyst from that mission yet, but I would suggest using the armor catalyst over hull patch batteries. And then in engineering, we are using the auxiliary ejection assembly. This console is nice because it's giving us plus 17.8 bonus exotic damage. The activatable ability is also nice, and if you drop it at the right time, usually the perfect time for me would be we go in from the left side and we have just taken out the nanite spheres we had just taken out the generator and the transformers, and now we're going into our first set of spheres that just came through the gateway. Now we G-well them, drop down our subspace vortex, and hit them with our pulse, our charged particle burst, and then as they're kind of starting to die off, you drop that, and you can use it as an evasive maneuvers because it's going to give you an incredible speed boost, but it can also do some really nice damage if dropped in between a lot of ships and actually give you some good DPS. Then we're using the quantum deceleration field. This is the console that comes on the Edoulg. It's giving us plus 15% to exotic damage and plus 50 to scientific readiness, which is nice. This ability also, the activatable, is pretty nice when used correctly. You can see for the counters, it's giving us 2,000 physical damage per second for 10 seconds, ignore shields. Then the next one is giving us 26,000, so it's a pretty nice console. Then we have, in our science, we have our field exciter with EPG. This is the single most I've ever seen one console give, because any field exciter is going to give you, I believe, plus 25 if it's Mark 12 very rare. So if it's Mark 14 gold and it's just let's say it's a EPS field exciter, it's still going to give you, I think, 32 and a half to, or maybe 35, I'm not sure, but it's going to give you, no, sorry, 37 and a half, since 75 is the double. So it's already going to give you 37 and a half EPG. Now this one has EPG as the mod, as you can see, so it's giving us 75 to exotic particle generators. Then we're using the exotic particle focusers here. I'm using the EPG and Crit X one, so it's both giving me a boost EPG and control. I'm using 4 of those. The tactical console, we talked about the chronometric capacitor. It's giving us a boost to exotic. It's giving us a boost to torpedo damage, which is nice. We are using 2 torps. This is a Sci Torp. And it's giving us a boost to polaron damage and some weapon power. Here we're using the Delphic tier. This, again, the activatable can be random. The activatable can be pretty nice, but the passives are still really good. Plus 20% bonus exotic damage and plus 5 critical severity. Then we have the Constriction Anchor. This one's mostly just for its passives, not the activatable ability. 23.7% bonus exotic. And then we have the Dynamic Power Redistributor module. We are not using this one so much for its passives, because on this build, the damage resistance, it's helpful now, but we don't really need the directed energy damage. This is for the ability that it grants us when we activate it, plus 40% bonus damage. That's just all damage, so it's helping our exotics, and it's giving us the plus 100 bonus damage resistance and the whole regen per per minute for 20 seconds, so it's really nice. And then we are using the pets from this, the Elite Sphere Builder Erebus frigates. You have to have the Tier 5, that ship itself, the Erebus frigate, to be able to put these pets on there. They're pretty cheap though, so it's not a bad thing. If you have the Sphere Builder Edoulg or the Destroyer, which is also not a bad ship at all, the carrier, these are really, really nice pets. So you'll see we're still using Science Ultimate pretty much with, yeah, I guess we didn't pick that, but that's not a big deal. Look at traits, pretty basic. We got all hands on deck, exotic modulation, unconventional tactics. I was using numerical superiority and then checkmate. We have inspirational leader, particle manipulator, which is the R&D 15 for science, which is really nice for an exotic build. I have photonic capacitor, fleet coordinator, innocuous, inoperative. Both of these are, this one's lowering our threat and giving us a little bit of severity, and this one's giving us crit chance and severity. Then we have projectile training, ablative shell, and conservation of energy. For our space rep, we're running auxiliary power offense since we don't really need high weapon power here. Then we're running particle generator amplifier, giving us another 5% for EPG. We're running precision and advanced targeting systems, and then chronocapacitor array for help with our Bridgebuster cooldowns. And then we'll take a look at our stations. The Universal Lieutenant Commander, we're using it as a science. We have our hazard emitters for our shields. We have our hazard emitters for our heal, and it's also giving us a little damage resistance, and it removes a hazard, which is always nice versus the Borg for the plasma burn. Then we have energy siphon to trigger the deteriorating secondary deflector. Then we have subspace vortex 3, which is always a nice ability. In our attack here, we're running fire at will 1 just to get our beams firing around, getting shots off, and targets we may not be aiming at, help get those generators down. We have a chemosite and torpedo spread 3. The chemosite's really just to help with the torps. Right here we have our Lieutenant Engineering. We're running emergency power to engines 1 and reverse shield polarity. Then we have our Commander Science Temporal. We are running channel deconstruction. That's the one temporal operative ability we're running. You can swap out and use another and switch around a little. You could use recursive shearing if you still want. There's a few different of the temporal operative abilities that are still really nice, so you can play around and decide there. We have destabilizing resonance beam here that also triggers our secondary deflector, as well as charged particle burst, which is an ability I really like when used correctly, especially when spheres are grouped up. Then we have our gravity well 3, and in our ensign down here we're using tachyon beam, another ability that triggers our deteriorating secondary deflector. So if we look at specializations, you'll see we're going temporal operative still, so we do have continuity. Now temporal operative, it does not work the same obviously with threat and stuff, but on this build we were never using threatening stance or any of that, so continuity is still nice for defensively. And then temporal operative, for every point you have in, it's giving us a bonus to particle gens. So right now we're getting plus 48.5. And then secondary, we are still running strategist. So that's the basics of the build here. We'll take a look at the duty officers that we have. We're running a damage warfare specialist for Borg and emergency con hologram. 2 duty officers you'll see on almost all my builds that are looking to do DPS in ISA or HSE. Then we have 3 of the deflector officers, chance to reduce recharge time on deflector abilities, which is definitely a big thing for the abilities we use for this build. And then the gravimetric scientist to reduce cooldown on exotic damage abilities when creating anomalies. So, this is a ship I use. This is basically my ISA HSE build. I do change it up a little bit for CCA. So, we'll maybe do a video about that. But so I mean, overall, exotic science builds, like just pure exotic builds like that on science captains for me, it's still within the same area, to be honest, damage wise. I haven't quite got to the high numbers I'd seen in some runs. I think my record before was um, high 120s. Maybe I broke 130. Now I think my record's 105. I haven't played with this ship a lot, obviously. I haven't been playing a lot with any kind of build so far. But, I'd say the average DPS out of this build, where maybe the average used to be exactly 100, maybe now the average is 90, 95 for me. So a little less on the average and a little less on the highest number I've put out in a good run. So maybe there's some things we'll look into switching out and seeing what happens. But for right now, this build is still working out really well, and it shows that Exotic Sci is still a very viable build that is working out. If you like exotic builds, if you like science stuff that run heavily on the exotic, be sure to check out the some of the channels that really got me into this kind of build, taught me a lot about it, and that would be Darth Protius on YouTube and Ernest Ramos on YouTube. Both guys do exotic sci and they do it very well, and you can learn a lot from both of them. So I hope you check it out, and I hope you liked it. Talk to you guys later.